Resident Evil Reverse is one of the most shameful, soulless, money-grubbing, disrespectful to the source material entries into the Resident Evil franchise. And that's kind of impressive in and of itself because it had a lot of competition.
Beautiful 180, crazy, thinking about the way I was that the heartbreak changed me.
Happy 25 years of Resident Evil, everyone. What a way to celebrate. A year and a half. That's how much time has passed since the open beta of Resident Evil Reverse and its final release. So I don't blame you if you've already forgotten it was supposed to be coming out. I almost did. Neobards, the creators of the underrated and undersupported Resident Evil Resistance and the upcoming Silent Hill F, decided to reanimate the corpse of Resident Evil Reverse and put it out there hoping that people would care. So did they do anything with that year and a half of extra development time? Did they address any of the balance issues that players had at the time of the beta? Wait, okay, it's the Resident Evil Reverse. They must have used that time to get a bunch of classic maps and characters and throw them into the game and really capture the entirety of the Resident Evil universe. Right? I honestly don't know what they did with that time. Before you can even get started in the main menu, Capcom forces you, the player, to spend 10 minutes creating a Capcom ID, so they can harvest all your data in exchange for playing the game that you already paid for. Okay, here you go, Capcom. I assure you this is all accurate and up to date. Now, before I levy any more criticism towards this, I do want to compliment Neobards for adding a much-needed playground mode, where you can test out each of the characters and monsters before jumping into the online game. Here, you can read damage output for all the special moves and weapons, as well as getting a feel for the movement of the game before actually hopping into a match. Their previous game, Resident Evil Resistance, could have used a playground mode. You might also notice there's a comic book-like filter over the game, which is divisive amongst players, but they've included an option to toggle it on and off. I kinda like it. It makes the characters pop out a little bit more, which helps me play the game, so I leave it on. Resident Evil Reverse is a classic case of an asset flip made specifically to milk the Resident Evil fanbase of their money. All 3 maps in Resident Evil Reverse are ripped directly from the source in the laziest, no-effort fashion possible. They straight up took the levels from Resident Evil 7, Village, and 2, threw in some bits of clutter, removed all the doors, and then just called them arenas. This is shit that kids messing around in Gary's mod could accomplish in an afternoon. I expected so much more from Neobards. Considering that this game is called Resident Evil Reverse, they limited the scope of the universe to just 3 maps from 3 Resident Evil games. And according to their own content roadmap that they published, that is it. No more stages are going to be added. There are over 30 Resident Evil games, of which probably have 12 unique maps apiece. 30 entries, and this is it. 3 maps. This is fucking sad. What can I say? I'm absolutely flabbergasted at the hands-off approach taken to the level design here, especially coming off the richly detailed and beautiful maps Neobards crafted for Resident Evil Resistance, where all the stages had 3 layers to explore with plenty of randomized elements to keep the game fresh each and every time. There was a real artist touch to some of these set pieces. Total love not only for Resident Evil, but other deep cuts into Capcom's massive library of IP. None of that care or attention to detail was paid into Reverse in the slightest. It's absolutely devoid of affection. None of Reverse's 3 total maps have anything special about them. No environmental hazards, traps, stage enemies, or anything the player could interact with to give the map a distinction from the others. They're just straight up asset flips with cover walls peppered in. What an absolute joke. I can't honestly say that Neobards gave up entirely on Resident Evil Reverse, I think it would be more accurate to state that they never even got started. There's only one type of game mode that you can play in Reverse, a 5-minute deathmatch with a grand total of 6 whole players per session. By the way, all the games are host dependent and they can rage quit at any time with no penalty for dropping out. How's this still a thing in 2022? You can select between 7 survivors at the time of this video, but there are a couple more planned for release. Survivors are made up of classic Resident Evil protagonists such as Jill, Claire, Leon, and Chris, some secondary characters like Ada Wong and Hunk, and a complete seat filler named Tundra, who's supposed to be part of Chris's combat unit. I really don't remember them. Once further, they had the entirety of the Resident Evil franchise to draw from for characters, and they just decided to put in generic NPC number 4. Only 2 more slots left, guys. Who could it be? Certainly not going to be Jim Chapman from Resident Evil Outbreak, because that would just be too much fun and they can't have that. Each of the characters has their own stats, which are readily displayed in the profile so you know what you're signing up for. They each come equipped with a set of 2 different weapons and 2 different special skills. I wish I could say they address the balance issues here, but the general consensus amongst Reverse players is that there are clearly some characters that have better skills and passive perks than others. For example, Chris Redfield has a skill called Indomitable Spirit, which prevents him from dying until it wears off. You'll see a lot of players spamming this and then tanking all the enemy's ammo, and there's nothing you can do about it. Ada also seems to have a broken special skill with her pipe bomb arrows. She repels up to the ceiling and then launches out a strong AoE pipe bomb, which can clear out groups of enemies at a time. She's a bit of a glass cannon in Reverse, sporting the highest weapon damage output of any of the characters, and to make matters worse in terms of spamming broken skills, the player can spend points to unlock coin modifiers, which enhance the attributes of said skill. For example, cutting down the cooldown timer, increasing the duration, or the damage output of said skill. There are special weapons like a grenade or rocket launcher that will spawn on the map, so at any point a survivor could just pull out a one-hit kill weapon to tip the scales into their favor, bypassing the need for skill in all senses of the word. Since you're only afforded 5 total minutes for the entirety of a match, most of the matches just boil down to all the players running to a centralized location and just having a shootout, and then trying to score as many points as possible in the last 30 seconds to tip the scales into their favor. There's no strategy, there's no difference between each of the matches, it's all the same, and it gets boring rather quickly. As a survivor, you'll come across these purple virus capsules. They have the benefit of boosting the survivor's damage output, and they will help determine what monster you turn into. Now, the game's draw, if you could really call it that, would have to be the bioweapon aspect. When a survivor is downed, they will morph into one of 5 total bioweapons from the Resident Evil series. The bioweapon you turn into is determined based on how many virus capsules you're currently holding. If you're holding no capsules, you'll turn into a default fat molded from Resident Evil 7. The molded's primary ability is to self-destruct, which is useful for getting quick revenge. The power of the self-destruct is determined based on how much successful attacks you've landed or how much damage the molded has taken before they self-destruct. Generally speaking, you have the choice to instantly self-destruct, so you can take a 5-point penalty and then quickly spawn back as a survivor, or you can try and shamble your way into battle and sneak in a surprise attack on distracted players. Now, I usually don't bother with the molded, as you only have 5 total minutes to rack up as many points as possible, and I just feel it's a more efficient use of my time to blow myself up, respawn as a survivor, and go back into the fray. If you die while holding 1 virus capsule, you have a chance of turning into the Hunter Gamma or Jack Baker. The Hunter Gamma is a speedy little devil. It's pretty good at chasing down revenge targets. It has a long-range acid-spitting attack, which will stun an enemy, so you can go in and use your Devour skill to swallow a survivor whole. Problem is, you can't use this Devour skill on the bioweapons, so you'll mostly just be sticking to your tail whip. Then there's my favorite character, Jack Baker, who was the main reason I wanted to play Reverse in the first place. He's one of the better bioweapons overall. He comes equipped with his pair of giant chainsaw scissors, which allows for a powerful chainsaw spin attack that has a decent AoE. It's really good for running into crowds and quickly racking up points. He can also grab a survivor and welcome them to his family. Now, if you're holding 2 virus capsules at the time of death, you'll either turn into Nemesis or the Super Tyrant. Nemesis is shockingly weak, and I don't know if this was a recent debuff or what, but if you're not careful, he will be downed in no time. I assume this was a balancing decision made because he's one of the more long-range classes. His special skills are his signature rocket launcher, which sports a decent amount of damage and range. Then he also has a mid-range tentacle ground pound, which spawns a small field of spikes, plus a longer range tentacle which will pursue a nearby enemy for a possible finisher. I wouldn't recommend the ground pound as it has a long animation cycle and it's easily cancelable by other players, so I don't use it. And finally, there's the Super Tyrant, the most powerful bioweapon in the game. It specializes in close range attacks and it will easily down survivors and bioweapons with ease. It has a dashing strike where it drags its claw across the ground in a fast motion, which is used to close the gap and deliver a finishing strike. It also has a leaping strike, where it jumps up and delivers a small AoE smash attack, and this attack has air control, so the Tyrant can just completely control the area with ease. This move doesn't use up all your special bar, so you'll see this move being spammed by Super Tyrant players over and over again. So if you see a Super Tyrant, try to deal with it from a distance. Now, according to the content roadmap that Neobards put out, they're planning to add one final monster to the roster of characters. And I think they might have already spoiled it in their launch trailer because in a few frames, you see one of the werewolves from Resident Evil Village pop up, seems to have a weapon and some moves. If that ends up being the case, that the werewolf is the final monster, and you consider the entirety of the Resident Evil universe to draw from, and they just land on generic werewolf man, it's gonna end up being one of the lamest fucking rosters of any multiplayer game of all time. I sure hope I'm wrong about this, but I don't think I am. At the end of the match, the winner is determined based on how many points you earn from killing and getting revenge on players who killed you. You earn MMR, which contributes to your overall player rank, and I guess determines who you are matched up against. You also earn result points based on how well you did, which can be used to buy perks, skins, and other garbage. Like Resistance, the amount of RP can be boosted with paid DLC booster packs. Special note, Capcom insistently pushes these booster packs at the conclusion of every match. Are you sure you don't want to use a booster pack? No, I'm good. Please stop asking. There are little bonus challenges to aim for in the Battle Pass section. It has its own leveling system, separate from the player rank, so try not to get lost here. These are randomized sub-objectives like dodge roll a certain amount or kill X amount of enemies with specific weapon or skill. Completing these earns you points, which are then used to unlock trivial things like victory poses, wallpapers, trinkets, and occasionally a skill buffing coin. You can also pay $9.99 for a Premium Battle Pass, which will give you access to a second challenge bar filled with skins, character perks, wallpapers, and gun trinkets, and other garbage. These are all locked behind the Premium Battle Pass and cannot be earned any other way. The Premium Battle Pass also increases the amount of BPP you earn from completing a challenge by 150%. Honestly, I would have had more respect for Capcom if they just sold all the skins individually and just let the player pick out what they wanted. A 6-player 5-minute deathmatch. That's all you get. That is all that Neobards turned in here. That's the most bare minimum multiplayer that I can think of. Did they just not come up with any other game modes? They didn't have this conversation. Like, I can come up with game modes. How about a virus capsule mode where the players go around the match trying to capture as many virus capsules as possible before the end of the round, and you kill players, grab theirs and loot, and it goes back and forth. There you go, virus mode. Or how about survivor only mode where nobody morphs and it's just straight up a chaotic deathmatch and you get to have fun as survivors. Or on the flip side, biomutant mode, just biomutants and destruction, or super tyrants only, just something ridiculous. Being able to modify just certain elements like the timer. Oh, here's a wild one. 10-minute deathmatch. Could we have 10 minutes? Can we have any sort of agency on how we play or restrict things like removing the rocket launchers and stuff from the match and then just have people rely on the standard weapons and their own skills? Or just what happened? Would any of these basic ideas be all that hard to implement into the final game in like a day's time? I don't think so. Well, my friends, the numbers don't lie. Players are already fed up with this shit. According to Steam Analytics, Reverse only managed to earn half the total amount of player base Resistance did on the PC. The players obviously grew bored of the single game mode, dropped it, and are never coming back. Let's refer back to the content roadmap. Now, currently, we are at update 1 in this timeline. We can expect 2 more survivors, 1 more creature, some costumes, and more battle pass content. Hooray! Under each update, there's also a vague tag of "and more to come." And at the very end of the timeline, there's a bold red "more coming." Please don't give your hopes up, Reverse players. Neobards and Capcom are going to drop this game and pretend it never happened as soon as possible. This exact same roadmap of promised content happened with Resident Evil Resistance, and it had double the amount of players. Resistance was released in April of 2020, and they released a couple of characters, a ton of loot box content, and some new maps. And then when October of 2020 rolled around, they dropped support of the game entirely. They did not address any of the issues of balance whatsoever, and cheating is still rampant in Resistance to this very day. Reverse has half the player base of Resistance, so there's just no way the few content updates are going to do anything to retain the current players or attract new players. Reverse is dead. Again. I know I've spent the majority of this video trashing on Neobards, but I truly believe they're capable of much more than this. I have very high expectations coming off of Resident Evil Resistance. It's clear that they have a love for this series, and that is evident in the level design and creativity that they put into Resistance, and I feel that it's another case where they were hamstrung by Capcom, by budget or other reasons, and Capcom was like, "You've got to turn in something. It's been a year and a half. Just put out something that's functional," and then walk away. And I feel that's exactly what happened here with Reverse. There's no love behind this design whatsoever. This was made out of pure obligation to release something. And it's really sad to see that these people that have beautiful, beautiful level designers and character designers and great creative ideas just be snuffed out before they could create something that could truly capture their love for the Resident Evil universe. It gives me a lot of concern knowing that they are now taking over part of the Silent Hill franchise. And if they're willing to roll over for Capcom, I wonder what that relationship's going to be like when they're working for somebody like Konami, who give no shits and will tell you when the deadline is and how much money you have and will rein in all your creativity. I sure hope that is not the case for Silent Hill F. That is, if Konami doesn't cancel it beforehand. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. It's your boy Hikiko. Thank you so much for watching this video. Check out my Resident Evil Online retrospective covering Resident Evil Outbreak, Resistance, and a little bit of Reverse. It's kind of a prelude to this video, as well as some of my other videos, and if you would, just subscribe. I'm not going to ask anything else. That's it. Free. Subscriptions are free. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.